You this morning.
And likewise, I know.
Indeed.
It's good to be here. I haven't been here before.
Oh, you have not? This is your first time?
It's my first time to the studio.
Oh, so my goodness. So you're most welcome.
Thank you very much.
Great to have you and pleasure.
Thank you.
And I hope your morning has begun on a good note.
Yes. Indeed? I'm here with you.
Right. I can see, which is fantastic.
Yes.
So, you know, a lot has been happening. And you have been quite vocal on the state of governance and the state of economy. And, you know, you've talked a bit about, you know, the debt situation in the country. We'll get into, you know, the matters at hand at this point. But first of all, what is most interesting is today, we do have the finance bill, which was tabled yesterday by the Finance and Planning Committee. It's set to be debated today in Parliament ahead of tomorrow's budget day as well. We have the Cabinet Secretary who will be tabling his budget estimates. First of all, there's a lot to unpack from the finance bill. You know, there are a number of proposals there. You have the housing levy. There has been concessions by the government. So first of all, I want to get your general view of the finance bill 2023 and what you make of it.
Thank you, Zainab. Let me be very, very categorical.
Right.
It is an open secret that we in this nation are facing huge economic challenges. I think for the very first time, every Kenyan that I know of and that is speaking is feeling some sort of pain about the economy. There is a stagnation. Now, when we recognize that, we must ask ourselves what are the solutions and what created the problem. The finance bill is coming at a time when we have no money, when we have a high cost of living, and it is very clearly viewed publicly and by majority of people as a very punitive bill. It is raising the cost of our pain in terms of our purchases, our pain in terms of a producer. So this bill, which is seeking, in my view, an unrealistic target. You know, you've been saying this bill, first and foremost, is a budget of 3-point-something trillion. It is actually 4.45 trillion, as was tabled by the Finance Committee yesterday.
That's 3.6 trillion spending plan, plus that's exclusive of the 850 billion worth of debt redemptions, right?
Correct.
So 4.5.
4.5.
Right.
4.45.
Yes.
Now, it is also seeking to raise tax revenue by an almost 1 trillion shillings from the current collections. We've estimated from what we have seen as a trend this financial year, which is ending this month, the tax collections will probably, tax revenue will not exceed 1.9 trillion. That's what we're estimating. The target of the previous budget, this current budget rather, has been 2.1, but it looks like they'll reach about 1.9. Now, 1.8, 1.9. This particular finance bill and the target of the budget is to raise this collection of tax from 1.9 from President Moi of 200 billion a year. And by the time he exited, tax revenue, he had cumulatively gotten to 1 trillion over 10 years. Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta took over when it was 1 trillion. And cumulatively, you are now seeing we have reached 900 billion over 10 years. Increase from 1 trillion. Now, Kenya Kwanza is saying that in just 1 year, we can achieve a target that has never been achieved even over a 10-year span of raising revenue by another 1 trillion. It is an impossibility. This is an unfathomable target. Now, what we need to ask ourselves is what is it they are addressing? What are they addressing? They are addressing the outflow of money. What is money? Where is money going? It is going, if you look at the budget, the biggest outflow of our money is going towards payment of debt. And that is what, to service debt. And that is what they're trying to address, because it is a big problem statement. That is primarily what they're trying to address.
Now, isn't that what the reason why they have proposed the tax measures they've proposed within the finance bill. Of course, you say it's unachievable by, from your standpoint, but by proposing, like, for example, the 16 VAT on petroleum products, that is going to, increase the revenue is going to be, at least to a substantial extent, increase their revenue. That is going to help, at least to by a certain extent, bridge that gap that is our debt as a country.
I think any reasonable economist and anybody who has done any research in any economy that is where we are, where, as I was saying, we have stagnation because we are slowing down, and we have inflation. It's called stagflation because you have high costs of living. Anybody will tell you that when an economy is in this state, you can't load more taxation on people. You can't increase the cost of production. You get to a level where you get diminishing returns. You collect less and less revenue. So you will not reach that target. You enter what economists call is the Laffer curve, that now you collect less because you've asked for too much. And that is exactly where we are. We are going to collect less. We will not meet that target. And as I said, Zainab, we are addressing one problem, the debt outflow, servicing of debt. Now, here is a bill that is so punitive on producers. If you're a producer in this country, whether you're an industry, whether you're a farmer, whether you're a content creator, whether you're an exporter, you are being punished for being a producer. But a consumer who is sleeping in his house, the employer is being told you have to pay for that person who is not even working to buy a house. This is how ridiculous this bill is. It is an unachievable target. And it's because this government is cutting around this issue of debt servicing and what to do. Their attempt is to try and raise money from us. And that is one attempt. I'm saying they will not achieve it. They will not achieve this target. And instead, they should be looking at the debt itself and saying, what do we do? And in this, as I've been saying... So
where are we right now? Where are we in terms of our debt? When we're looking at that situation at this point, you're saying we cannot be able to achieve by just taxing, Kenyans and saying this is the solution to, managing our debt situation.
Correct.
Where does that leave us as a country
now,
then?
That leaves us this way. I've been trying to explain this over the last few weeks. That I want you to imagine, Zainab, that for every 100 shillings of revenue, every 100 shillings of revenue from KRA that they collect from us, that goes to government, 70 to 80 shillings is going towards the payment of debt.
Right.
This is an appreciation from 10 years ago when only 18 shillings was going to service debt. The government thereafter needs to find money for the counties, another 30 shillings. It needs to find money for salaries, another 50 shillings. It needs to find money for pensions and operations, another 30 to 35 shillings. It is borrowing for recurrent expenditure. Now, because of this, we said, let us analyze what is going on here. What exactly is going on here? This debt that has accumulated such a huge amount over the last 10 years, what has been going on? And why is it not giving back to us? Why hasn't it grown the economy so that the economy can service this debt? Why is it seemingly a situation where we entered a debt trap long time ago?
How did we get ourselves here?
That is the million-dollar question. Because in all sincerity, after you reach a level of 30%, paying 30 shillings of every 100 towards your debt, we are into what you call a debt trap. We need more and more debt to sustain ourselves.
Right.
But why we are asking this is because we asked the same questions you're asking. What is it? How did we get here?
Yeah.
And what is this debt? So we chose to do an audit. We chose to do a very clear audit that ended March last year. And we used some people who were in government. They had left government, but they were internal auditors of government, headed by a very good friend called Muchere, Bernard. Now, when we looked at the debt, we looked at the debt together with the law. Now, the 2010 Constitution, marvelous document, for the first time embedded very many aspects of our finances there. It says categorically, where our budget is anchored, where our debt is anchored. Now, Article 220 is very categorical. It says that our debt is anchored. I'd like you to. Our debt is anchored in what you call estimates of revenue, expenditure, differentiating between recurrent and development expenditure. This means that our budget, as we know it, is not the finance bill. The finance bill is one bill called the finance bill. It's a standalone. But our budget, in other words, where you post debt and where you post expenditure, are called the appropriations bills. There are two bills that you'll see being presented tomorrow. This is the expenditure. There's the appropriations development, and there's the appropriations recurrent. That is our budget. Now, in the appropriations development, that is the only place debt can be anchored. All the debt that we take must be anchored in appropriations development bill. Right?
So which accompanies the budget itself?
It accompanies the budget itself. It is the budget.
Okay.
Because budget, what Parliament does is that it passes bills. It does not pass policy statements. Like I've seen some people arguing, oh, some of this debt is in the budget policy statement. That is not a bill that is passed by Parliament. Parliament passes laws. And the two laws it passes for the budget are the appropriations. Bill development and the appropriations bill recurrent. Now, in the Public Finance Management Public Finance Management Act of 2012, it is categoric. It says over the medium term, and the medium term is defined as any period beyond 1 year. So it's between 2 and 5 years. It's defined in the Act. In the over the medium term, the national government's borrowings shall be used only for financing development expenditure and not for recurrent expenditure. So you find our debt in development appropriations bill. That is where it's anchored. So we did an audit of the appropriations development over the period of 9 years, ending last year, March. And what we found is that Parliament approved 2 trillion worth of borrowing. 2 trillion, no more. 1 trillion in the first term.
Over the past 9 years.
Over the past 9 years. 1 trillion in the first term and another trillion in the second term of Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. That's what Parliament passed for borrowing. Now, we went to what you call the exchequer account, CFS account, which is in the central bank, which is where all votes, all passing of any expenditure goes through. It's like our own accounts. Even if you have a loan, you have a statement. Now, the statement at central bank, March last year, was showing that we owe 8.4 trillion.
Wow. Okay.
Which was an amazing figure, sign up. So we said,
so you have that figure of 8.9.
8.4 trillion.
8.4 trillion.
8.4 trillion.
But when we look
that is the bank statement showing us in CBK.
All right.
That the country owes debts of 8.4 trillion.
By March of
2022. But
between 2013 to 2022,
correct,
we only managed to borrow according to the documents. According to the law, 2.9
2 trillion.
2 trillion.
Only 2 trillion was approved according to our laws for the taking of debt. 2 trillion. But the statement at central bank is showing that we owe 8.4.
So what does that mean?
So we further analyzed it. And we found that during the term from 2013 to 2022, the government had actually borrowed an extra 4.1 trillion above the 2 trillion that Parliament had passed.
How?
this is what I'm going to explain. So they had taken a stock of 6.1 trillion, including what Parliament has approved. We then looked further back and said, was there a carryover of debt from Mwai Kibaki? We found 2.3 trillion. We said, okay. So if you take 2 trillion approved, plus 4.1 which you never approved, plus 2.3, you get to the figure of 8.4 trillion, as we are seeing in the central bank. We said, higher. Hiyo ni mzuri. Zainab, my story is not over. In the appropriations recurrent, remember there are two appropriations bills.
The development bill.
There's development bill
and
recurrent bill. In the appropriations recurrent, it stipulates what recurrent expenditure is going to be paid by our taxes, our tax revenue. So there you have repayment of loans. You have salary payments. You have, on top of that, operations of government payments from our taxes directly. Now, there we found debt payments over the period of 9 years. How much have our taxes gone towards the payments of debt, both domestic and external?
From
2013 to 2022 March. How much have we been servicing our debt?
From our own taxes.
From our own taxes. And we found a figure of 5.6 trillion. So we've paid 5.6 trillion, right? But central bank is showing a figure of 8.4, which means this 5.6 is never being credited as a payment towards debt. All it is an accumulative amount, okay, of what has been taken inclusive of interest that has reached 8.4. But the 5.6 is not appearing as a credit. You know, the fortunate thing with these days is that, you know, these things are available if one reads. Just have to look at the documents and you find it there.
But you have the recurrent expenditure which goes into paying salaries,
yes,
doing all these things for the country. So you can believe that this money then goes into paying all these things that the government needs to do, right?
Exactly.
But not paying for our debt.
No, it is. Recurrent development bill is where they take from our taxes the payment of our debt.
Right.
That is why I was saying that our payment of taxes from our revenue, our taxes to debt is now something like 70%. 70 shillings of every 100 is going to the payment of debt, which is our taxes. So it is in the recurrent appropriations bill, right? Now, why is this 5.6 not credited? We don't know. And we've been asking this question now for many, many months, since July last year. And nobody is answering. Now, the summary of that audit is this. The sovereign is the one that is responsible for debt. We are the sovereign. The people of the Republic of Kenya, the 50 million of us, are responsible for this debt. It is now accumulated to levels we don't understand. But all we approved was 2 trillion. So our summation is the following. We approved 2 trillion. All right? We have clearly established that the loans that were handed over, carried over from Mwai Kibaki 2.3 are legitimate. So we have loans of 4.3 that we legally, under our constitution and PFM, are liable for. We have also paid 5.6 trillion. So as far as that audit is concerned, the Kenyan people have a credit of 1.3 trillion shillings. We owe nobody anything, legally. That is our position. And I am asking to be challenged on this by anybody. Now, if that is the case, why are we struggling?
So are you saying that the Jubilee administration, which essentially is the Jubilee administration, which took over power in 2013 to 2022, took loans that were illegal?
Yes. Because the
can that
legality,
happen?
this is the $1 million question. And you
I'm
know,
still trying to understand. and you know, okay, let's go back and try and explain, because
Yes.
I'm sitting, I want you to imagine I'm just sitting in my house somewhere,
Yes.
Kuresoi huko.
Yes.
And I want to get it. I want
Yes.
to really understand, because
Okay.
up until that point, it makes sense that you're saying, okay, fine. So we have that 4.3. That one that we picked from Kibaki's government, and the one that we had,
passed
which
in
was
Parliament.
2 trillion.
Correct.
So 4.3 trillion.
Yes.
We've paid 5 point this
Yes.
trillion, 5.6 trillion.
Yes.
So we have a credit of
Yes.
more than a million, or more than a
1.3 trillion.
So then, but at this point, we still have a huge debt, which cannot be explained.
We cannot explain it. This is the $1 million question. Look at this budget that is coming. We are going to be paying out as debt. This is the big fear of Kenya Kwanza government. Almost 1.7 at current exchange rate, almost 1.7 trillion shillings going out as debt payments, both domestic and external. And I'm saying we should actually be asking for money back. Now you imagine if we got money back. You imagine if this money is not going out and it's coming back to all of us here, Wanjiko and Mora. You would not be complaining in this country about anything. We would not be needing to raise VAT on petroleum products. We would not be needing the house levy. People will be doing it on their own. They won't need government to be a driver of low-cost housing. There'll be a demand for it, and the private sector will be doing it. Banks will have reduced the interest rate because there'll be no demand for their money. So they'll be looking for all of us to invest and take mortgages. You would have such a buoyant economy here. But instead, money is going to oligarchs. It's going out to a few. And we, as the sovereign, are not liable for it. That is our assertion. Now, I'll go on further, because today I want to unveil where money has gone, why we have this problem.
And I want you to hold on to that point, because we have to take a quick break here on the show. You're watching AM Live. A lot of questions and a very interesting standpoint here from Jimi Wanjigi on our debt burden and really how the state of the economy looks like. I'm trying to still wrap my head around some of the statements he's made. But when we come back, please talk to us. The hashtag we're using is AM Live NTV at NTV Kenya at Zainab Ismail. We're going to be sampling some of your views during the course of this broadcast. So stay with us. We'll be back in a very few minutes.
Dad, what made you decide to become a doctor?
Because my father needed one. And you, what do you want to be when you grow up?
I want to be happy like you.
Life insured is love assured.
Bluebird peanut butter, made with 100% pure peanuts and a good source of omega-6. Grow healthy and happy kids with Bluebird peanut butter. Available in 200 grams, 400 grams, and 800 grams. Buy a pack today.
Talk, we came to ball. Let's get straight to it. Ready for whatever. We gon' ride. Line 'em up. Let's go toe to toe. Tell 'em pick a side. Put in work. We don't play no games. Watch it run in high. Savage mode. We gon' keep it G. Yeah, you know the vibe. When it's meal time, who gon' tell my dogs we can't eat? Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm a threat.
Get the Ballin' Twister box for only $7.50. NBA, KFC, balling all day.
Africa Energy Forum's 25th anniversary is in mainland Africa for the first time. It will be held from 20th to 23rd June in Nairobi with the official endorsement of Honorable Cabinet Secretary Davis Chirchir, Ministry of Energy and Petroleum. Find out more at www.africaenergyforum.com.
Ready to showcase your football talent? The wait is over. Safaricom Chapa Demba is back. Bigger, bolder, and better. Safaricom is on the hunt for the next big footballing sensation. Register your team. Visit chapadimba.safaricom.co.ke and you too can be the next football star. Cheza kama wewe.
All right, and welcome back to the program. You are watching AM Live as we take a pulse check on the state of the economy and also issues of governance. I'm not alone in studio. I am joined this morning by politician, businessman Jimi Wanjigi, who's trying to unpack for us from his standpoint why we are where we are in terms of the state of our economy, and especially on the debt burden that is a pain point for all of us as a country. Now, Bwana Wanjigi, as you were trying to explain to us, I mean, the debt trap that you're calling it, first of all, we are in a debt stagnation. Are we in an...
We're actually economically
stagflation.
Yes.
Right, stagflation, as you call it.
Yes.
And you were trying to make us understand why we are where we are right now. We talked about trying to make us understand why we are where we are right now. We talked about, you know, legitimately we managed to borrow as a country over the past 9 years 2.2 trillion shillings.
Yes.
And then we picked about 2.3 trillion shillings from Mwai Kibaki's government.
Yes.
So we owe legitimately, legally, you're saying 4.3 trillion as our debt.
Yes.
But, and in fact, we still have credit that is owed to us as a country.
Yes.
But we are servicing a debt of 8-point-something trillion at this point.
Right now, in fact, it's over 9 trillion. Because, of course, it cumulatively, the governments have been taking. And there's interest. So right now, as we are talking, our audit was up to March last year.
Right.
It's now over a year. So we have cumulatively gone to 9 trillion something. We are heading towards the 10 trillion mark.
But how do you explain all this? I mean, how do you explain all this happening under the watchful eye of 50 million Kenyans?
Yes.
Parliament.
Yes.
You have independent institutions.
Yes.
You have the Auditor General who audits accounts.
Yes.
And I mean, it still doesn't make sense.
That is the million-dollar question. Because, as I said, Zainab, at the beginning, our law is very clear about our debt. Where is our debt anchored? It is anchored in the appropriations bill development.
Right.
How do we take our debt? We can only take debt for development in the medium term. We can only take debt short term within 1 year if we have a cash flow problem, PFM. So we are very clear what the law is. So you look for this debt. And I want to tell you, in the development budget, appropriations bill, it is such a good schedule. It says, for example, we are building a water project in Kitui. That water project is going to cost 1 million shillings. The taxpayer, us, are going to contribute 500,000 shillings. The Bank of India, or Exim Bank India, is giving us a loan, external loan, of another 500,000 for that loan. The schedule is very clear even where we are taking debt. So it is going towards a project. From there, the Ministry of Water is given a vote and then gets what you call an exchequer issue from the Treasury to spend that money from taxes and from the debt. Now, anything that is not in appropriations bill development means that any loan outside of that, we did not take for any project. Because how is it spent, money spent? The ministry would have no avenue of spending it because there's no vote. It cannot draw the money. Now, what I believe has been happening is that there is a bill that is passed in Parliament, there's laws that are followed in Parliament, but the Treasury is doing something else and has been doing something else. And the biggest problem with us is that we don't read. Last week I was at a book launch, my friend Professor Kigami, and he said, and there was a very good professor called Professor Kombe, who said that the Mzungu used to say that if you want to hide something from an African, put it in a book.
Which I feel has always been an unfair assertion, by the way.
It means, look at the contradiction here.
Right.
Right? That tells you, right, because we are making people aware of this, that there is money that has been taken to the tune of 4 trillion, 4.1 trillion, more than double what we approved in Parliament. All right? Okay? And we don't know what it went for. It didn't go towards any project that we know of, because it's not in our books, those projects.
So, how do you explain, for example, then where did the government get money to do all these mega projects, the SGR?
It's in the budget. SGR is in the budget.
LAPSET project.
It's in the budget. It's within the 2 trillion.
It's within the 2 trillion that was borrowed.
Yes.
But not within the 4, which is unexplained?
No, not at all. The projects you see have been approved by Parliament, because the ministry can only spend what it passes through from Parliament. Now from your audit then, where did this money go? Now, I am today going to unpack Part A of Part 2.
Part A of Part 2.
Part A of Part 2.
All right.
The audit was Part 1. And I always said I was going to come to Part 2. This is the government is purchasing bonds and bills, domestic debt from our banks, from our good institutions in this country, and from people who want to invest in bonds and bills. Now, over the last 9 years, and I have a very good schedule here I'd like you to have.
Okay. So this is what?
This is now domestic debts, actual receipts as per the statement of actual revenue and net exchequer issues. So it's the domestic debt that we have taken over the last 9 years. That's the first column.
So this document has originated from, it's an audit that you've done independently?
Yes, but it's originated from the appropriations.
So you've taken a look at the Appropriations
so
Act.
I'll give you an example.
And you've accumulated this amount of...
I want you to read page 2. Right? Can you see statement of actual revenue and net exchequer issues? That's a statement from the government, from the Treasury. You see the column there, I think it's about number 4, domestic borrowing. Have you seen it?
Yes.
Net, original estimates, revised estimates, and actual receipts.
Okay, so the original estimates...
original estimates, that is the target.
Okay.
Then they revised the target.
Which increased?
Which decreased, actually. It was 1.1 trillion.
Oh, yes,
it decreased to 886.
Yes.
The collections as of April is 406.
This is 28th April 2023.
Yes. That is the column now we looked at all the receipts from before brought to date.
So this is a document that was originated from the Gazette notice.
From the Gazette notice. Okay. Now, so we looked at every year. Okay. Domestic debt, you can see cumulatively, right? 2014, 2015, 292, 2015, 506. These are domestic debts, 414, 420, and so on and so forth. The last year here, the target was 1040, as you can see. We're yet to get what they end up actually collecting. So that figure, we've just taken what they estimated originally.
As the original estimate,
but what they'll end up collecting
the revised one.
at the end of this month. At the end of this month, we don't know what they'll end up collecting. Right? It may be much less. But we've just taken the original estimates. Now, I want to tell you, these are debts taken, all right, that are not in the Budget Appropriations Development Bill. They do not exist.
How?
They were never passed for anything. They do not exist. We never approved them for any funding of any project. They do not exist.
But the money was...
The money was taken.
Right.
But they do not exist in any approval, right? And I said, remember, this is part A. This has never been approved by the Appropriations Bill Development for uptake. So Parliament never passed domestic debt in the Appropriations Development. There is no appropriation in that book that has passed borrowing domestically. So this money never went to any project.
So this,
let us start there.
This is what,
5.3 trillion. It may change a lot because of the last year. We cumulatively put the last year.
Which cannot be accounted for.
This one never went for any project.
But it was money that was collected.
It was money, debt we took.
Right.
From banks, domestically.
Domestically. And this is taxpayers' money?
Now, wait, I'm coming to that. I'm coming to that. This is our money in the banks. We are the ones who save in banks. The bank doesn't have money, it has our money.
Yeah.
As Kenyans. It's our money that is inside their bank accounts. So banks are taking our money and loaning it to the government. And when they're doing that, there is no law that they are doing it from. This has money that has come from our bank accounts going to the government of Kenya, but it is not towards any project. Now, inclusive of these monies, there is what is called redemptions and rollovers. Redemptions are bonds and bills that may have been taken before that were due or at maturity. So it may be inclusive here, right? Old bonds and bills.
Which will perhaps reduce the amount.
Yes. But I want you to now look at something very interesting. So understand this. So the banks take our money, our savings, and they loan it to the government.
For expenditure, for
so
development.
The government is borrowing from them.
Yes.
Right? And the government has not legalized what it is doing with this money because it is not in the Appropriations Bill Development. There's nowhere where we have approved it to go to any development project. Okay? We don't know what it is for. We don't even know why the government is borrowing. What is giving them the capacity to borrow? All right?
But how will banks just give money to the government without a law that says you know, without that approval by the law?
Yes, that is what we must ask them. We as customers and the shareholders of those banks had better start asking their management, how are you loaning the government? Which law are you following? And they'll be in big trouble here.
So what I'm going to do this, by the way, because of accountability as well.
Yes.
I will keep this.
Yes.
And after this show, what we're going to do is I'm going to sit down with our expert, our economist, Julian Samboko. We're going to go through this particular statement.
I would love that.
And we will get back and try and compare whether this document is actually legitimate.
Yes. Now, I want to go to column 2.
Okay.
Now, column 2 talks about the repayment, right, of our domestic debt.
Okay.
Now, the interesting thing is that in the appropriations recurrent, remember that's where we said there is our debt payments from our taxes, right?
Right.
The debt payments from our taxes are in the recurrent appropriations bill. Now, over the years, you can see categorically that we have repaid domestic debt to the tune
4.9.
4.9. Now, the last 1 year, 2022-2023, we're waiting to see the final figure at the end of this month.
Yeah.
We're just taking the original estimates, right? But that is what was budgeted for. So we have paid 4.9. Now, Zainab, this is the question I am asking. If you look at year on year, each year, right? We borrowed 292, we paid 287. Isn't that the first column? We borrowed 414, 216, we repaid 369, right? In 2018, 486 we borrowed, we paid 505, right? In 2020, 790, we paid 701. This is tax revenue, the payments, all right? Now, that means we had the money to pay them. So why were we borrowing? If we have the money equivalent, why are we borrowing?
Okay.
Year on year, why are we borrowing? Even forget what for.
Because there was no balance.
Because we had the money. We had no shortage. We had the money.
But we needed to borrow because after we repaid, there was no balance to continue, with our development. So
No,
we'll
that's
go
not
back
true.
and borrow.
Now, that's not true. That's not true.
Now, for example, let's say, for example, in 2019-2020 financial year,
Yes.
the debt stood at 558 billion, or is it trillion? 500, yes, billion, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
And we repaid 515.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Which means that there wasn't much money that was left there. 558 minus 5, I'm terrible in math, I'm sorry. 558 minus 518, is still very little amount of money left for the government.
Let me take you. This is just the repayment from our taxes to domestic debt.
Yes, just domestic debt.
Right?
Yeah.
But our taxes collected enough money to pay external debt. Our taxes collected enough money to pay for salaries. According to the appropriations recurrent, our taxes and KRA statements, our taxes collected enough money, right, for operations of government. We did collect enough. I'll give you that year that you're talking specifically. That is year what? 2020.
Yeah, 2019, 2020.
2019, 2020. The tax 2019, 2020. I'll tell you. It's right here. Yeah, here. 2019, 2020. Right? Excess tax revenue over recurrent expenditure. No, sorry. This is the wrong one. Okay, here we go. 2019, 2020. We collected tax revenue according to the actual revenue and exchequer issues of 1.453 trillion. 1.453 trillion. All right? Okay? So if you say that, we paid 500 to domestic debt. So we had money. We thereafter paid salaries. We thereafter paid our external debt. And we thereafter paid operations of government. So why were we taking domestic debt? So there is the legal side, that this domestic debt is not anchored and approved by Parliament. But in the recurrent appropriations bill, payments towards domestic debt is there. But in development appropriations bill, it doesn't exist as a loan to be taken. And I beg the question, if we have got the revenue, why are we borrowing from banks? What for? First, it's not legal. And number two, we didn't need to. And I'll tell you why we have been borrowing from banks. And this is why I want you to go to column 4. Column 3 and column 4.
Okay. Still on this first
on the first page.
Right. Which is the amount paid for interest?
Amount paid, repaid in principal over the years, 2.3.
Okay.
And the amount paid for interest, I said the last year, we are waiting to see the final that they take. We are going by the original estimates. 2.6 trillion shillings has gone towards our banks over the last 10 years. Domestic borrowers, over the last 10 years, 9 years, right? As interest payments.
2.6.
Yes. As I said, we only, we've added just the original estimates of 22-23 year, right? So 2.6, let us even say over 2 trillion has gone towards interest from our money. For money, we didn't need to borrow. We did not need to take domestic debt. First, it's not anchored in law. And second, we did not need the money. We had the money in taxation to take care of all our revenue expenditure.
Did perhaps the money, I'm trying to understand, perhaps the reason why the government borrowed this money was to plug the deficit?
No, we had no deficit. That's what I'm trying to say. We had no deficit. This is created. That's why we have reached 70% of our revenue going to debt. It has been created. over time on an illegality, and there's no need. We had, as I told
But
you, you took the year, a very good year, 2019, 2020.
As an example.
As an example, we have paid 515. We had collected that year 1.4 trillion in taxation revenue, our money. It was enough to pay salaries, counties, all right, and operations of government. So why did we need to borrow even more? Because we still borrowed.
So are you saying that there was what, sort of a collusion between the executive and financial institutions? Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is that categorically,
because the banks received an amount paid for interest, what, 2.6 trillion?
I want you to sign up to go this very, very carefully. First and foremost, we did not pass in our laws. The sovereign, in parliament,
you're saying it was not captured in the bill?
It was never captured where the debt, any debt we take is, which is appropriations development. So we did not approve these borrowings of domestic debt. That's number one. Number two, I'm saying we did not need to take it. We did not need to take it. Now, the law also says we must only take debt for projects, not for recurrent. This money is nowhere anchored, or rather for projects, not for recurrent. This money is not anchored to any project funding. Any in the medium term. None. So what has it been used for? If it has somehow been used for some recurrent expenditure, right? It is again against our laws, because most of this debt is beyond 1 year. You can only borrow short-term cash flow problems, let's say for some recurrent, we have a war, we have COVID that has come, only for a period of 1 year, not more. So we are saying, what is this money? It's not in our laws, it has not followed our laws, and on top of that, we didn't need to borrow it because we had the revenue to take care of all our needs. We didn't need to borrow. So what is it? It has been a bubble that has grown and grown. And the tragedy is the following, because you asked what is the conspiracy. So imagine this, a bank doesn't have anybody else's money but our money. It's our money that we deposit.
Okay.
So it takes our money, it goes to government and gives it our money at a particular interest rate, right? And you've heard them say, oh, this is safe, right? The government takes our taxes to pay them. Do you see the tragedy? And then when we go to borrow from banks, they tell us, oh, you know, interest rates are so high. So they disenfranchise us of our own money. Yet they have grown from us.
From the same money.
From the same money. And we are asking, so they are taking from us our savings, they are taking from our taxes, and we are asking which law is being followed here. And number two, why did we need to take it? We didn't need it. We had the revenue.
So now we're here. So now we are servicing our debt, which is at 8-point-something trillion. And it's a tough situation that we're in. You're talking about the illegality that has happened. Then how do we move forward?
Now, what I'm very happy about is that we have seen a lot of interest in people now going to court, right? Started by Senator Umtata, that we are not, as a sovereign, responsible for this debt.
What does that mean?
It means odious debt. Now, odious debt, yes, it means that it is a responsibility regime related, not sovereign.
So you're saying that Kenya Kwanza should declare this an odious debt and say, look, we took over from a regime that borrowed this money illegally, so we are not eligible to pay for this debt?
Yes.
How?
Now what happens? Again, the Constitution is so good. Eh? You know, the Constitution has a column which says that for any expenditure, the president must sign warrants. All right? And I think you've seen the president signing at the budget time. He signs warrants for expenditure. That gives the Ministry of Finance, the Treasury, permission to spend. All right? President Ruto is going to be signing that after this budget. should he sign any of these unwarranted debt payments, he now becomes responsible. But as of now, he has not signed. So it is regime related. But should he sign any of these illegal debts as repayments, then he becomes responsible. It is now transferred to his regime. Warrants are in the Constitution of Kenya.
So let me read this out a bit.
Yes.
So I found this. It's from an organization known as the Committee for the Abolition of Illegitimate Debt.
Yes.
And it says, according to the doctrine, for a debt to be odious, it must meet two conditions. All right. So first, it must have been contracted against the interests of the nation, or against the interest of the people, or against the interest of the state. And two, creditors cannot prove that they were unaware of how the borrowed money would be used. Have we met those two conditions?
Oh, yes.
Are you saying that the money that was borrowed against the interest of the people of Kenya?
We are supposed to borrow for development.
Okay. Because then the government, then the previous regime must need to prove that this amount of money went into development.
You see, our laws are clear where development is anchored in terms of debt.
Right.
They did not spend it in any appropriations development bill. So it is not there. So it is against our interest.
Okay.
Number two, those who are loaning, buyer beware. You must understand the laws of a country. If you did not follow them and understand them, there is a big problem. You are responsible. It is odious to the sovereign. It is very clear. Our laws tell us where debt is anchored, what it is for. And this money did not go towards any project of development. So it is not for the sovereign. It is not for the sovereign.
So who is it for?
That
the
is
previous
the, that
regime?
is that
so
is
who
the,
will pay for it?
That
Where does that leave us as
tell
an
me,
economy?
Tell me, why should we?
Where does that leave the confidence of, the people who give us debt?
You know, that's a big question.
The creditors.
Are you saying then that the 50 million Kenyans who did not know about this debt, who did not approve it, who had no benefit, should bear the brunt? Continually get pain for this debt that they don't know about, that has never been to their benefit? Is that what you're suggesting, Zainab? I am saying those who are responsible for doing it should ask questions, should be asked questions, and take on that burden, because it is not for 50 million Kenyans. We should not be made to pay for something we don't know about, never came to our benefit, right? And is continually giving us pain. We must say no to it, and we must say no loud and clear. I'll give you an example of Mozambique. They did so with a foreign Eurobond called the Tuna Bond. And in 2019, their constitutional court ordered that the sovereign is not responsible. That bond was $2 billion. And it was written off as far as the books of the National Treasury of Mozambique were concerned. Mozambicans suffered a bit because everyone started asking, is that a banana republic, all of this. But I can tell you, today, they have been freed of a huge burden, and even IMF led the investigation of why that happened, and has now started giving them a lot of money because they rectified a wrong. That caused the downfall of a lot of people, especially in the banks that gave the money, like Credit Suisse and so on. Right? It did. They even had to pay huge fines because it was a massive investigation. So I am saying that we as Kenyans are not liable for debt that is not approved in Parliament in the appropriations development.
So Wanjigi, what you're saying is, and perhaps what your advice is to the president right now, is to declare this debt odious. That's what you're saying?
100%. Before he signs the warrants, because he's going to sign them after the budget. If he signs those warrants, he now becomes responsible. He must insist on clarity of the law in relation to this debt, and have a forensic. We have done it. It's the first ever. If he wants it, we can give it to him.
Okay.
And we are prepared to sit and challenge any government official on it, and declare this as odious. It is not on us, and stop coming back to try and raise huge taxes that we cannot afford at this time.
So
That is my assertion.
Your assertion.
Yes.
And I mean, today you leave us with many questions from this, what you called the part 1?
Yes, part 1A.
Part 1A of the revelation
of part 2 of the revelation of what has happened and where money has gone.
All right.
Yes.
And you've given us this document. It is a statement that you got from the Gazette notice number 6204, taking a look at the statement of actual revenues of 28th April 2023, and also what you
cumulatively over the years, the same statement.
The same statement.
Yeah, similar statement. You know,
all right.
Every year it's done.
All right, so what we're going to do is I am going to sit down and we're going to have a review of this particular document, and we'll call you back, because if there's going to be if there's going to be any gap here, we will have to ask you the questions, right?
I can't wait, Zainab.
All right.
I will come any day.
Fantastic.
24 hours notice.
But you've left so many questions on this issue as we wait for our budget reading tomorrow. Thank you so much, Jimi Wanjigi, for coming in this morning. I wish we had more time to have this conversation, but this is where we have to wrap it up. Your world is coming up shortly with the Winnie Lubembe. Remember, we'll also be giving you a 360 coverage of that debate in Bunge on the Finance Bill 2023. So stay with us. My name is Zeta Bismail. Have yourself a good morning and good day.